Hey everyone, this is David Brown with the migration update for April 27th, 2023 from the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. My friend Kim and I started out at sunrise at Salmon Creek Nature Preserve. It was a beautiful sunny morning with calm winds and mist rising off of the pond. Here we have a savanna sparrow, so you can notice a little bit of yellow here above the eye. Kind of a thin bill, somewhat pinkish, and it's got some striping on the front that, if we saw a better angle, it would look thinner than the striping on a song sparrow. We crossed over to the adjacent farm field to look for field birds. Here we have an American pipit. But our main target was Lapland longspur, and we discovered this breeding plumage flock of Lapland longspurs last week, so we wanted to go back and check it out again. Lapland longspurs are uncommon to rare depending on where you live, and they are often mixed in with flocks of horned larks in the winter, so it's a common thing to go out looking through flocks of horned larks trying to get longspurs. And today we had at least 24 that we had in the air at a single time. There could have been even more than that, so it's unusual to have a flock this big this late in the spring, and it's just spectacular having them in this breeding plumage. And one final look at another Lapland longspur. And besides the pipits and longspurs, we also had some horned larks as well. We got over to Braddock Bay Park by 9 a.m. to start the Hawk Watch, and it was a sunny day, and the wind started out very light, almost no wind at all, and so as the wind picked up around 9:30, it was a northeasterly lake breeze right away, and then throughout the day that lake breeze became stronger. One of the first birds that I saw from the platform was a species that I've been looking for and hoping to get any day, which is common gallinule. And I know this isn't the sharpest photo ever, but we can see that it has a red bill. Gallinules are similar to American coots, but coots have like a whitish bill, whereas gallinules have a red bill. And here's another photo of the same common gallinule. Can't really see the beak that well in this photo, but you can see some of the white markings on the side of the bird. And coots and gallinules aren't really ducks, they're more like swamp chickens. Here's a couple of male northern shovelers that was nice to see, and they were hanging out with some green-winged teal. Here's a great blue heron flying by. As the morning warmed up, we started to see some groups of broad-winged hawks, but because of that light northeast lake breeze, most of the birds were off to our left over towards the parkway. And we had a fairly good look at a couple of the groups, and some of the groups were fairly large, even up to 100 or more broadwings. So pretty good views in the scope, and this bird had made it all the way up to the lake shore and cut across in front of us, giving a pretty close view, but I didn't get the camera up until he was already by. And we also had this hawk fly over the platform, so we can see that it's got a long tail and a big head, kind of long wings, kind of lanky looking, and we see that it's got vertical teardrop streaking underneath. So this is a juvenile Cooper's hawk. By 11 a.m., the flight line had shifted in towards Frisbee Hill, and Kim was scouting over there and reporting that the broadwings were right overhead, and so I hurried up to get over there, and unfortunately, by the time I got there, the flight had shifted even farther in, but it was a nice sunny day over there. And there were some nice puffy cumulus clouds developing that helped us spot birds. We had sort of a light but steady stream of turkey vultures throughout the day for almost 100 total. Here we see a hawk that has dark patagial bars and a belly band, but it does not have a dark trailing edge to the wing or a red tail, but it has that typical buteo shape. So this is a juvenile red-tailed hawk. Compare that to this bird, which again looks the same kind of shape, that classic buteo soar. Again, we see the dark patagial bars and the belly band, but on this one we see a dark trailing edge and a red tail. So this is an adult red-tailed hawk. Here we have a large dark bird. We can see that it's really dark in the head and the underside of the body. And we see that the trailing edge of the wings is completely even. We're not seeing any signs of molt. And we also see some pale inner primary feathers. So this is actually a juvenile bald eagle. And not only that, but this one appears to be in very fresh plumage. And that's something that we begin to see at this point in the season, and especially as we get into May. This is what we would call a southern juvenile bald eagle. So this is a bald eagle that was born somewhere down south over the winter. It's from the southern population. They're born over the winter, and then they migrate north for the first time in the spring. So we can tell that just because of how fresh the plumage is. It's really dark underneath. Juvenile bald eagles that were born, let's say up north last spring to summer, by now they're starting to molt. They're showing a lot of signs of wear. So that we can really notice the difference between these really fresh ones and those more worn ones that were born last summer. Here's another turkey vulture, and it looks a little bit funny, I think, because one of these feathers here must be molting. So it just looks like it has these really long feathers, and then randomly it's very short. I think that, again, that's just feather molt. I looked down below and saw this wild turkey, and this wild turkey looked up and saw me and started sprinting. I've never seen turkeys run so fast in my life. Who knew they could move so fast? So we're learning a lot about turkeys this year. They can sprint, they can swim. Soon we're going to be teaching them to ride a bike and sign them up for the triathlon. And here's a rather ragged looking common raven that flew over. You can see kind of that diamond shaped tail because the middle tail feathers are quite a bit longer, whereas the outer tail feathers are shorter. Just a big corvid, somewhat pointed wingtips, big bill, shaggy throat. And remember that starting tomorrow, on Friday, April 28th, and running through Sunday, we have the Braddock Bay Raptor Research Bird of Prey Days Festival. And so I stopped over to see them setting that up today. And so here's a picture of one of the schedule signs for Saturday. Here's one of the rooms inside the building where the presentations will occur. And there's some really nice informational signs hung up all around the building. And in addition to the presentations, there's also a separate room where different organizations will have booths set up so that you can come in and visit them. So even though it'll be rainy this weekend, don't let that stop you from coming out and visiting us for Bird of Prey Days 2023. I'll put a link in the description. And taking a look at the eBird checklist from today, at Salmon Creek Nature Preserve in the morning, we had 30 species, and really it wasn't that birdy overall. Not really any warblers around. So the usual suspects you would expect this time of year, but no signs of real songbird migration or new arrivals. And then the checklist for the field birds, we had 29 species, and technically it's a separate hotspot. That's why I separated out them as two lists. For the 2 hours that I was at Braddock Bay Park, we had 46 species. And over at Frisbee Hill, we had 33 species. Looking at the HawkCount report for our migrant raptor totals, today we had 92 turkey vultures, 2 ospreys, 12 bald eagles, 1 northern harrier. For accipiters, we had 22 sharpies and 3 coops. For buteos, we had 409 broadwings and 5 red tails. And the only migrating falcon was 1 American kestrel for a total of 547 migrants today. That brings our April total to 27,117. And the season total to 36,289. The only new species for the season was the common gallinule. And taking a look at the forecast for tomorrow, it's looking cloudy with light rain later in the day, which mostly after 5 p.m. it looks like. High in the low 60s, winds southeast at 10 to 20 miles per hour. So this is an interesting wind direction, and it's a kind of weather that we don't get very often. So I'm not really sure how to predict it. Those southeast winds are a direct headwind for the birds going by. So for things like kestrels and sharpies, that usually keeps them down really low. Sometimes we get good looks from the platform if there's a lot of them migrating. And even though it's a southerly wind, it's not as favorable as a southwest wind because it is a headwind. So with the cloudy skies, I don't know if we'll get species like broadwings or not. If it's a thick cloud cover, we probably won't. If there's a little bit of sun in the morning and the clouds aren't too thick, then maybe we will get some broadwings. But with that southeasterly wind, the problem is every time the birds go by, then when they start to circle, the wind blows them back. So it takes a long time for the birds to make any progress. So could be an interesting day. Again, I'm not really sure how to predict it because it kind of depends on exactly how thick the cloud cover is. And we're in the peak migration time for a lot of species like broadwings and even things like sharpies and kestrels. We should still be getting quite a few. So we'll have to get out there and see how the day develops. But it looks like the rain's going to hold off until either after the count or the very end of the count. So should be an interesting day to get out. They're not predicting a ton of songbird migration overnight, but there will probably be some amount of new arrivals in the morning, and by the morning time, the winds are shifting to that southeasterly direction. So I'll probably get out early and see if I can find any migrants in the morning, and then again, we'll have to see what happens at the Hawk Watch, but it's not looking like a total washout or anything, so might be an interesting day to get out with these unusual weather conditions. For Saturday, the first full day of bird of prey days, looking like rain early and then remaining cloudy with showers in the afternoon, high in the mid-50s. And again, somewhat strong southeasterly winds. So that'll be interesting. We might have a better idea of how to predict that based on how tomorrow goes, but it's also looking like that rain might interfere with any raptor flight. So we'd only expect light migration for Saturday. And for Sunday, we're looking at showers early, becoming a steady rain later in the day, high in the low 60s. And again, moderate to strong south-southeast winds. So those interesting winds continue yet again, but it's looking quite rainy, and that will probably prevent much of a raptor flight. After Sunday, it's looking rainy for the next couple days into next week, but actually the winds are looking pretty good for Monday and Tuesday. So keep an eye on those days, because I bet that we won't get as much rain as it's looking like. So those could develop into somewhat big days, and we'll keep an eye on that as we get closer. Again, I hope you can check out the Bird of Prey days this weekend. I'll put a link in the description if you'd like more information about that. And I hope to see you soon out at the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch platform. From Lyco Birds, this is David Brown. Thanks for watching.